Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 134, recorded on September 8th, 2021. The Cloud Pod has NetApp ONTAP. Good evening, Ryan, Peter, and Jonathan.
Hey, Justin.
How are you guys doing?
Good evening.
hanging in there. Hanging
There
in
he
there.
is.
I think that's all I got. That's all I got this week.
I saw the pain in your face that our listeners can't see, but I can see in the video.
It's been an event.
It's one of those short weeks, Labor Day weekend. Get a 3-day weekend, and then try to fit 5 days into 4. I feel your pain. I get it. Yeah. Well, we have some news to get to, so let's get to it because people have some meat to go smoke apparently.
Yes, that's me. I'm gonna go smoke some chicken.
Nice.
All right. Well, first up is DigitalOcean, which we haven't talked about in a while, but they, as many people know, they're my main favorite non-hyperscaler cloud provider. And I think last we talked about they had launched their Kubernetes service. Today, they have announced the acquisition of Nimbella, which is a 3-year-old startup that sets out to make multi-cloud serverless software development easier. The terms of the deal were not disclosed. Nimbella offers a Kubernetes-based serverless platform, and the startup founders previously created Apache OpenWhisk, an open source service cloud platform that Nimbella also leans on. It's pitched as cloud agnostic, meaning it can run on public or private clouds, and thus supports hybrid and multi-cloud setups. Of course, there's a quote here from DigitalOcean CEO Yancey Spruill. Serverless computing is the next evolution of the cloud that further removes the need for developers to manage complex infrastructure. People want to access the benefits of serverless capabilities without a significant learning curve, and they want functionality and pricing that is easy to understand and predictable. I get having to add a serverless component to DigitalOcean. It's a competitive thing. I'm not sure why they care about multi-cloud or cloud agnostic, unless they're going to try to make a multi-cloud serverless product that's run by DigitalOcean, which would be weird. Or maybe interesting. Who knows?
At least they have the hybrid cloud play, even if they're not multi-cloud in the cloud as such. It is interesting that they'd buy a company though, rather than just implementing their own serverless stack with OpenWhisk.
Right, or what's the other one? The one from Pivotal that's out there. The
Knative, yeah.
Cloud, yeah, Knative. Why not just use Knative and build your own service on top of that? I didn't really understand the play to buy it.
Being in that a little bit in that service industry, I think there's a lot more to like building from scratch. That type of managed service might make a lot more sense to pick up a company that's got a really good plan and some technology to make that sort of jumpstart that and make it a really good customer experience when their first customers come on.
Plus, you've got the engineers who built OpenWhisk in the first place. So, I mean, you can't deny that they're the best SMEs around.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is actually the first time I think I've heard of OpenWhisk. I don't think I've come across it before, that it's even out there. So it was all news to me. This company I never heard of, with an open source product I'd never heard of, purchased by DigitalOcean, which I have heard of. So 2 out of 3.
It's the second serverless product that I'm learning about this week. And so, anecdotally, that's, serverless gaining steam. Because there's also kubeless, I found out, which is same kind of thing, which is interesting.
Oh, nice. I think I'll always prefer the sort of the deep integrations you get from the native functionality. So, you mentioned hybrid cloud may not be a selling point for it, for DigitalOcean at least, but you can't deny that the way IAM is integrated with Lambda or Cloud Functions for GCP. I mean, there's just so many reasons to not use something which isn't native to the cloud that you're already in. I think they must be going for the hybrid / DigitalOcean customers. Maybe
for sure.
Yeah. Maybe they're going for like a DR type plan or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I do see that OpenWhisk supports Go, Java, Node.js, .NET, PHP, Python, Ruby, Rust, Scala, Swift, and even newer cloud native ones like Ballerina, which I never even heard of that. So,
whoa. Uh-oh.
But then of course the website also mentions Mesos, and I'm like, oh, well, that's dead. So,
oof, yeah.
Apparently, Ballerina is a Apache OpenWhisk runtime. So who knows? I don't really understand where we're at this thing.
Well, if they're going to make up their own languages, they may as well support old ones that have been deprecated as well.
Why not? Oh, sorry. Actually, it goes to another page where Ballerina is an open source programming language for the cloud that makes it easier to use, combine, and create network services. So I have no idea what this is. Now you've really lost me. All right.
Next.
Moving on to AWS. So last week was AWS Storage Day on September 2nd. And unlike the summit and the security conference, it was not a snooze fest with action-packed information announcements. And you can find all the replays and the slides available to you out on their website, as well as some interviews with Cube hosts with some of the GMs of various announcements. So first up is one that I thought would never happen. And so, yes, truly, hell has frozen over. And now you can get NetApp filers on top of AWS natively. The new service, Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, allows customers to launch and run complete, fully managed NetApp ONTAP file systems in the cloud for the first time. And to be clear, that's first time on AWS, because you could run NetApp on other cloud providers, but I'm not gonna be metal of the marketing people. NetApp has a traditionally powered on-premise NAS and have provided a widely adopted set of data access and management capabilities. FSx for ONTAP is a fully managed. You can start to enjoy all the features in minutes. AWS provisions the file servers and storage volumes, manages your replication, installs software updates and patches, replaces misbehaving infrastructure components, and manages the failover and much more. There are 2 storage tiers available to you. The first is the primary storage tier, which is built on a high-performance SSD and designed to hold the part of your data set that is active and or sensitive to latency, and you have up to 192 terabytes of that. And then capacity pool storage grows and shrinks as needed and can scale to petabytes. And it is cost optimized and designed to hold data that is accessed infrequently. Within each Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP file system, you can create 1 or more storage virtual machines, each of which supports 1 or more volumes. And volumes can be accessed by NFS, SMB, or iSCSI, which is pretty cool.
My favorite.
You can then access it via EC2 instances, ECS, EKS clusters, workspaces, VMware Cloud, on AWS or on-premise apps and services. This is available in most AWS regions on launch, and pricing is based on multiple usage dimensions, including the primary storage, capacity pool storage, throughput capacity, additional SSD IOPS, and backup storage consumption. And I do recommend you check out the pricing examples because they are a bit complicated, but if you're already buying NetApp storage, you already know they're complicated. So super easy for you on that. They are deployed in multiple AZs, 2 AZs, in fact, and they offer you 99.99% availability SLA for each file system.
I only have one question, really.
Go on.
But why?
So I see this as a continuation of the hybrid cloud, right? So I know that, people are, if you're in the data center, you want to do DR and replication of your storage infrastructure. This is an easy way that you could replicate that into the cloud. You can think about data lake applications where you have workloads that are in a private data center and you want to sort of import data into a data lake. This would be one way to enable that as well. And so and for NetApp, it makes perfect sense. They're getting a whole lot of recognition for their, proprietary management of storage. So it's great press for them. It makes perfect sense to me. But
and I'm sure NetApp didn't, spared no expense in partnering with AWS on this particular product. At the end of the day, this looks a lot like the NetApp Cloud ONTAP version that you can buy from NetApp directly at cloud.netapp.com. And then you provision your own EC2 instances, you provision your own EBS, and then you use their console to manage it. This is just them basically offering you that same service, but Amazon is managing the EC2 boxes for you, which is very common to some of the other managed services they've done. And then basically they're just putting a wrapper on top of what NetApp's already providing to you. So I think from that perspective, it's not a very far stretch. It's just a way to partner with NetApp differently, make it look native, make it work with the same APIs and IAM and Cloud Trail and all those things. And give customers a way to move from their on-prem NetApp filers to AWS much easier.
Okay, now Jonathan, say it again.
I assume this is all built natively on top of Amazon services, and they really are just managing the service for you on EC2. So if that's the case, then is this actually? I believe this is the first offering of this type that AWS has offered. Because we've talked about Google partnering with people to operate appliances in your own VPCs, and same with Azure. So I think this is probably the first of many partner integrations.
Redis is is it Redis or was it? Oh, sorry, Grafana. Grafana may be similar, where they're actually running Grafana on servers and managing it. And, you can get the enterprise version from Grafana directly. So I think it's the second one of those, but the first storage vendor for sure.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the Azure or GCP play, like it was sort of provision NetApp infrastructure that was like adjacent to your cloud compute in the.
Yeah, so I believe in the Google space, it is adjacent, right? It's, NetApp owns the storage, it's attached to your VPC. I think in the Azure case, though, it's very similar to this, where it's provisioned on top of Azure VMs and provided to you in that method. But maybe we can get Anthony Lai, who's the executive vice president, to come and talk to us about it at some point. But I do have some quotes. Speaking of Anthony Lai, executive vice president and general manager of public cloud services at NetApp, and he is really the brainchild behind all the cloud things going on at NetApp. And having talked to him multiple times, he does really get what it takes to move a legacy infrastructure company to the cloud. So he's definitely interesting to listen to and hear his perspective. But he says, NetApp is a cloud-led software company that specializes in helping our customers get the most out of their data. ONTAP and its data management capabilities are integral for some of many mission-critical workloads. With Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, we've brought NetApp's trusted file storage and data management capabilities to the AWS cloud by providing a fully managed service that's supported, run, and sold by AWS. We're making it simple for our customers to leverage the power of ONTAP for virtually any appliance.
This is just the definition of co-opetition.
Exactly. At the end of the day.
It's pretty convenient, actually. With storage shortages and silicon shortages, it must be pretty difficult to manufacture your own hardware at this point. I mean, we see problems all over the industry. So it may be a very important play for NetApp to partner with clouds in this way. If they can't buy their own hardware and make their own hardware to sell for the data center market anymore because of supply chain constraints, then maybe this is the next best option.
But don't the hyperscalers also have to acquire the same things?
But they have bigger wallets.
They have
bigger
their
wallets.
own silicon in many cases as well, which helps get them a lot further along the path.
Yeah.
There is a quote here as well from Wayne Duso, the Vice President of File, Edge, and Data Services at AWS. And I'll share that one before we move on. In collaborating with NetApp to deliver Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, we're giving customers the only complete cloud service that is built on ONTAP and provide its most popular features and capabilities. Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP now makes it even easier for customers to migrate applications and run them on AWS using the same familiar file storage workflows and data management capabilities they've used today on premise. So the one thing about that quote kind of reminds me of is, so maybe Amazon FSx is just a brand that they can plug anything into. They've already plugged FSx for Windows into it. They already have the other one for the really high compute. Now they have NetApp. Do we start seeing Amazon FSx for EMC, or do we see Amazon FSx for other cloud, other storage providers and solutions? This is really a gateway to them being able to partner with a lot of those type of vendors. That might be quite interesting in the long term as well. So we'll just see where FSx goes from here. But I think this is a great opportunity for companies who are doing the NetApp thing and definitely looking to make that switch without having to re-platform.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'm going to look into, because if we can migrate all of our old NetApp snapshots, which are currently the sticking point for migrating all that data to the cloud, then this is a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
All right, so moving on to the next part of Storage Day, EFS currently has always offered you two standard storage classes, EFS Standard and EFS Standard Infrequent Access, and then two one-zone versions of that as well, EFS One Zone and EFS One Zone Infrequent Access, just to make it confusing. And customers love the cost savings of infrequent access, but they also want to ensure that they won't get unexpected data access charges if access patterns change and the files they haven't transitioned to IA are accessed infrequently. And so that's key, because the key thing about files that are in infrequent access, every time they get access, you pay for it. Where if it's not in infrequent access, you just pay for it as part of your cost per gig. Now, AWS is launching Amazon EFS Intelligent Tiering, which is a new EFS lifecycle management feature that automatically optimizes costs for shared file storage when data access patterns change without operational overhead. So they've sort of already had this for a while, to be fair. so you could move data from standard to infrequent access, but there was no way to get really back from infrequent access without going through some manual hoops and through some extra steps. And so this is really giving you the ability to go bidirectionally. So if this file hasn't been accessed for 6 months, but then all of a sudden today, starts getting access, instead of paying for every access you pay that one time, it moves it back to the standard, non-infrequent access tier. And then basically it starts the clock over again, which typically you can set anywhere from a day to 90-day window that you want to move between intelligent tiering. So one of my friends that I help do some consulting for from time to time on his website, we use EFS and frequent access, and so we went and turned this on, and we moved some data, and we saved him some money, which was super nice. So I actually got to use this one.
Freaking customers. We want infrequent access to save money, but also we want to access those things more frequently when we need to.
Well, I mean, again, it's, your website has these things that you use often, and then, hey, like the Christmas files and the Halloween files, you don't use those as often. And so, when you need them in the fall, I like them to be highly available and not cost me as much money. But when I don't need them or occasionally need them, they can be infrequent. So.
Yes. Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, it's logical, reasonable. It makes sense. If I haven't accessed it for a year and suddenly I access it again, it might be accessing it more than just once.
Yep.
And if not, tear it back down.
Later, move back to infrequent. Yep.
Yeah.
So it definitely gives you the flexibility and options that you didn't have before with EFS, which, EFS is still pretty expensive, even though they've done some cost savings and things. So anything you can do to kind of keep those prices down, I think, is a plus. So NetApp was pretty exciting. I was super jazzed about that out of the storage day, and cursing them that they couldn't have put that on Summit. But they all then announced this one, which I think is actually even cooler. And that is, you can now accelerate access to S3 with a multi-region application endpoint. The access endpoint now basically allows you to write data to multiple S3 buckets based on things like latency, etc. Building multi-region applications, of course, allows you to improve latency for end users and to achieve higher availability and resiliency in the case of unexpected disasters, but at the cost of pushing all of that in business logic into the application traditionally, making them responsible for writing the data to multiple S3 buckets. And there's been all kinds of hacks and replication technologies that we've built out over the years to solve this exact issue. And so AWS is admitting that they are now going to start helping us with that heavy lifting of multi-region apps, which is great. And with a Amazon S3 multi-region access point, you can define global endpoints that span buckets in multiple AWS regions. And with this S3 multi-region access point, you can build multi-region applications with the same simple architecture used in a single region. S3 multi-region access points deliver built-in network resilience built on top of AWS Global Accelerator to route S3 requests over the AWS Global Network. And by dynamically routing your request to the lowest latency copy of your data, S3 multi-region access points increase upload and download performance by up to 60%. And not only does this work for servers, but also for edge applications that need performance and reliable write-only endpoints, such as IoT devices. Replication between data can be either one directional, so if you want it to go to east and then get replicated out to all the regions, from the east region, and that'd be your right location, you can do that. Or you can do bidirectional replication between all of the buckets. This does have CloudFormation support day one, so that's always a plus. But of course, there is a catch. This is very cost complicated. So there are many, many costs associated to this that you have to be aware of. And so they're hard to predict, and I'm a little bit miffed that they went to this level of complexity with the costing. So first of all, because it's using the Global Access Accelerator, any data crossing it goes through the multi-region access point will cost you basically 0.0033 cents per gigabyte processed. And that is in addition to the charges for your S3 request, the storage data transfer, and the replication. And if your app accesses the multi-region access point over the internet, you're charged an internet acceleration cost per gigabyte as well, which depends on the transfer type, upload or download, and whether the client and the bucket are in the same or different locations. So, I particularly love it when we send Ryan to Singapore and he downloads a 500 terabyte file from US East through the Global Accelerator, because that's really hard to predict. So, there's just some gotchas here. So definitely get the calculator out, get the spreadsheet out, figure out what this actually would cost you. But, looking at the complexity of managing multiple regional access buckets and the application logic side might be cheaper to go this direction. And I think it's an option that's quite attractive, and I hope it gets a cost cut sometime in the future.
I hope there's another iteration of this, actually, because I think what customers asked for was a global bucket type, where regardless of the region they access the bucket in, the contents of the bucket was replicated to multiple locations. and that would work with existing applications. Just change the bucket type. It's still fairly region agnostic. The complexity this brings and the additional cost this brings is enormous. And I hope they reconsider their implementation of this. I mean, most of what you could do here, you could already do with bucket replication or with CloudFront or with other technologies. So it's kind of like, I find it a little over the top. I don't think it's what people actually wanted.
I mean, I don't know if it's what they wanted or not wanted, but I think at these prices, they definitely didn't want it.
No.
So I think if the price is a little bit more attractive or a little bit simpler to process and to calculate and make it a little bit more predictable, I think people would potentially be excited about this a little bit more than they are.
Curious to see the different use cases, because I bet there's use cases where this price is pretty nominal compared to the total infrastructure cost of the application, and the simplicity that it brings for the use case is totally worth it. But I don't have no way of figuring that out without just like turning it on and seeing what happens is what I feel like. Forget the spreadsheet, just turn it on and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to sound terribly negative about the whole thing, but there are definitely some useful features like replication control and finally an SLA around replication of objects to different regions. This is all awesome things that we really need as architects to use S3 for multi-region applications. So I'm happy about the feature set. I'm just a little concerned about the complexity.
I think it goes to show that the simple request of, like, I agree, the customer wanted a global bucket, right? I want to write here and I want it to be available everywhere, and I don't want to think about that. I think this illustrates that request is more complicated under the hood, and so they should abstract it. I agree with you there. It should just be sort of handled as part of the service, but they want to be real transparent in the pricing, because this is one of the ones where I bet you it'd be more expensive once you turned it on. You do your, thumb in the wind on your spreadsheet and try to get an idea, but then if you get a surprising bill, they want that up front.
There are a couple of things that you just mentioned, the SLA, that I did not mention as I summarized this down, as I failed in my job as summarizer in chief. So there are some options for the replication set. When you set it up, the replication, again, you can choose between, from one bucket to all other buckets, and like a write in this bucket, read in all other buckets model. And then there's also the multi bucket replication. So if I write data to one bucket and then to another bucket, all that stuff gets replicated. So yes, there is now an SLA, if you're willing to pay for it, of 99.99% that your data will be replicated within 15 minutes. And when you pay for it, they also give you replication metrics and notifications of this data. They will also replicate delete markers, and you can choose to turn that on or off. So if you don't want deletes to be replicated, but only in one region you want it to be deleted, you can do that, which allows you to potentially do some interesting, delayed deletes and some other things you can write and some Lambda code around that, or potential opportunities for future features. And then also you can do replication modification sync for metadata changes. So if you do have a bucket that you're writing in the East region and you're replicating it to all the other regions as read-only, but you still want to take some type of metadata and replicate that back from the read-only regions back to the write-only region, you can do that as well. And just replicate the metadata, which is interesting. So there's always interesting use cases that come out of that that could be cool. But again, if you want that SLA and guarantee that the data replicated, you can get an SLA now, which is appreciated too. I didn't see pricing for the SLA, but I imagine it's not cheap.
Yeah, especially if you have an RPO documented in a DR requirement for your company.
That's probably where the 50 minutes comes from.
Yeah,
it's a pretty common replication target for DR.
Yeah. Yep.
Brings to mind a feature request now. I got a feature request for S3 with versioning turned on. It's a point in time restore. So I should be able to say, show me my bucket as it looked 30 minutes ago or an hour ago. That would be awesome. I'm gonna
point in time. Yeah,
I will draft that after the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go.
Make my object store. Yeah.
Speaking of S3, how did they not make Storage Day September 3rd?
Missed opportunities.
Yeah.
Was September 3rd was a Monday, right? Maybe they just want to do a conference on a Monday. That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our last Storage Day announcement. In 2018, Amazon S3 launched intelligent tiering, which was great until you racked up a massive bill as it moved data from one tier to another, which I've done. But as part of the Storage Day tier, they're giving you new opportunities for additional savings. And that's because there's two gotchas to intelligent tiering. First, there's a minimum storage duration currently or was currently, that basically required you to have the data for more than 30 days in any given tier, which could be problematic if you had data that maybe it's a log file, you need it only for 30 days, but you don't want to keep it in S3 expensive tier. After a couple of days, you want to move it to a lower tier. But that wouldn't really work with the minimum storage duration, and you end up paying extra fees for those. And then the other one, which is the real killer, was monitoring and automation charges were collected for any object smaller than 128 kilobytes, because they didn't design this feature for customers who wanted to do lots of small files. They designed it for big files. But again, this is where customers then got penalized for using it for things that it wasn't designed for. And so because those were both two pain points that have hurt many companies, they have now eliminated both of those charges. So there's no longer a minimum storage duration period, and you are no longer charged a monitoring and automation charge for data smaller than 128 kilobytes, which is quite nice and will give you some definite savings as you work through intelligent tiering. So there you go. You guys are stunned. I can see the stun.
Yeah.
Trying to make a small object joke, but it's just but yeah. I mean, this is one of those challenges that you frequently run into when it's too late. You have a whole bunch of data, and it's little tiny data stored in mass becomes very challenging very quick. And so, a little bit of solace knowing that Amazon has the same sort of troubles that I do in my day job with their managing those files. But yeah, this is a nice thing, especially since a lot of Amazon driven log sources sort of kind of chunk up writes, thinking specifically like CloudWatch subscriptions and that kind of thing, like into arbitrarily small chunks of data as they write them in S3. So yeah, it's good.
Indeed. Well, that wraps up Storage Day. And then they gave us one last gift, which I thought we should talk about in the main show. First, the low code came for our Excel sheets and Access databases. And then it came for the bespoke developers, and no one complained. And now it comes for the AWS Transfer Family. AWS Transfer Family now makes it easy for you to create, execute, and monitor post-uploading processing for file transfers over SFTP, FTPS, and FTP for Amazon S3 and DFS. And using this feature, you can now save time with low-code automation to coordinate all the necessary tasks, such as copying and tagging. You also configure the custom logic to scan for errors in the data, including PII, viruses, malware, or incorrect file formats or types. And with managed workflows, quickly detect anomalies and meet your compliance requirements with ease. So there you go. FTP has gotten low code, no code before most other people did. It just shows the challenges of FTP.
Well, it also shows the sort of use case or the user base of, people administering, stuff like that. So it's like, I don't know how to code a complex workflow to make this thing happen. I just want these things to happen when you upload a file. So now they can drag and drop and make like kind of a WYSIWYG pipeline.
Is it really that much easier though with hieroglyphics instead of the alphabet?
Not to me, but it probably feels more, easier for those who aren't embedded in one zeros all day.
The number of clients I talk to who are like, "Hey, I need to transfer you a file. Can we just use FTP?" And you're like, "Really? We use S3 these days. Just use the S3 API. Like, why are we screwing around with this?" It's crazy. I'm
just curious. It's great having the low code way to configure that integration, but who writes the integration that does the thing with the file once it's been uploaded? I mean, that's not low code anymore. Running a virus scan isn't low code.
Well, I think Amazon's giving you some prepackaged low code that they wrote for you with their bespoke developers, so you could then plug it into your workflow.
As long as it does what you want. Yeah.
For listeners of the Cloud Pod, you know that I have no love for Microsoft Active Directory, which is why I'm excited to tell you about the leading cloud directory platform, JumpCloud. JumpCloud makes it easy to solve today's IT challenges by unifying device and user management through a single pane of glass, enabling you to securely manage your users and devices and perform common tasks like onboarding and offboarding remote workers. With JumpCloud, you no longer need to implement an on-premise Active Directory infrastructure or additional tooling to scope a user's access, and you can ensure that the user is coming from trusted devices and networks. Enabling JumpCloud's zero-trust solutions improves the security and compliance of your network, ensuring users have access only to the services they need when they need them. To start your organization's move to a modern, secure hybrid work model, try JumpCloud for free today at cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod. That's cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod. All right, well, let's move on to GCP, which had no new news this week, which means we're moving on to Azure.
That was easy.
Super easy.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of partners who wrote articles this week, and nothing super exciting on the GCP side. I think they took Labor Day off. Is what happened there. So let's see. Well, in 2019, Microsoft and Pivotal, which is now VMware, announced the Azure Spring Cloud, a fully managed service for Spring Boot applications, and also potentially Arabian Spring uprisings, potentially as well. But they set out to solve many of the common challenges enterprise developers face when running Spring Boot applications at scale. And the service, of course, manages dynamic scaling, security patching, out-of-the-box rotation, etc. But that wasn't enough for many of these customers, apparently. In fact, they wanted Kubernetes. Not just any Kubernetes, they wanted Tanzu Kubernetes. And so now customers have the ability to launch Tanzu components as part of their Azure Spring Cloud, including the Tanzu build service, the Tanzu application configuration service, and Tanzu service registry, all available to you in preview. So you can now run Tanzu with your Azure Spring Cloud enterprise service delivered to you by Azure and VMware. And I now know why Spring didn't really make it big in Java. If it requires this kind of complexity, etc.
It doesn't even. I want to say, but why here? I'm still a little bit confused. It's like
this is a much better why.
Yeah, you see this as more of a PaaS offering. Hopefully, if it's catering to a specific, application like Spring Boot, but now we still got to run it on VMware, on Azure, on VMware, on Tanzu.
Well, so VMware is all obfuscated from you, so you don't see the VMware, you don't see the Tanzu,
but it's there. It's
there behind the service, and Microsoft and VMware are managing it for you, which is, I guess, the thing. But then they're giving you this Tanzu build service. So, I really guess it's a hybrid play because those are the tools you probably have on premise if you're running Tanzu on prem, and now I have them available to me in the cloud as well. But yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
I just want one layer of abstraction, and then don't tell me about any of the other.
Like, why go through all this? Just do Kubernetes. Just do
Azure
Kubernetes.
Exactly.
Service.
I had this reversed in my head. I was thinking that it was going to plug into my existing VMware console and be resources that are running on Azure, but I could manage them all with a single pane of glass. But it sounds like this is more abstracted, which, yeah, you're right.
This is sort of like OpenShift, but on top of Azure in some ways. Although it's not really OpenShift because it's more limited to just Spring Boot apps. It's a bit of a weird announcement. For people who want this, I'm sure it's great. I just don't. I'm not ever been in this world where Spring was that big of a thing, because the last company I think was doing Spring Java was 8 years ago, so it's been a while.
It's definitely out there. It's an enablement, but doesn't need its own managed platform. Like I've never really realized. I'd never seen it to be that difficult to manage.
Yeah, neither. Well, because it's so complicated to manage, of course, you need an APM tool to view the details of your Spring Boot application. And, of course, you want to probably have the top right choice in the Magic Quadrant, which is Dynatrace, which, by the way, I did not know it was Dynatrace. That was a shocker to me. I was going to make a joke about, this being a Dynatrace, like the third runner. But no, they're the leader contender in APM now, according to the Magic Quadrant. But now you can monitor your Spring Boot with a very simple line of code in your Spring Boot application. It'll pull all the Dynatrace components into it and instrument that for you. So now get that built into your Azure Spring Cloud Enterprise product as well. So there you go. Dynatrace now available to you in Spring Boot.
This is the advantage of using something like Spring Boot, is that you can have this very easily pluggable tracing into your framework, and very little code to do that. So that part I really like, and that's one of the advantages. It's kind of neat.
Yep. Azure Files got some updates this week as well. 2 announcements for Azure Files. First is SMB multi-channel, which we talked about when it was in preview, is now generally available. And this, of course, is the thing that you used to do back in the 90s when you needed to move files really quickly off the internet. You download one of these third-party utilities that would then basically copy files in multi-streams, so you could download them faster. That's now come to SMB clients, finally. So you no longer have to wonder why the file copy from the server down the hallway from you is taking 45 minutes to copy 5 gigs. You can now get multi-channel streaming of that data if you're using SMB multi-channel for Azure Files. So that's the first thing. And the next one is Azure Files now supports storage capacity reservations for premium, hot, and cool tiers. So you can reserve that premium, hot, steamy, cool storage.
I'm not following that. That's good.
As long as premium's in there somewhere.
Exactly. All right. And then our last Azure announcement for the week, automatic scaling with Azure Virtual Machine scale sets with flexible orchestration mode. It's now in public preview. This enables elastic virtual machine profile and automatic scaling for Azure Virtual Machine scale sets with flexible orchestration, elastic profiles, and automatic scaling. Hopefully, this doesn't include Jupyter support. Maybe a little too soon for that joke. The features are now in public preview and provide up to 1,000 instances in a scale set, ability to manually add VM instances to the scale set, the option to spread instances across fault domains automatically or specify a fault domain. You can place on-demand and spot VMs in the same scale set and define a VM profile and specify instance counts, as well as automatically scale out and scale in based on metrics, schedules, or AI predictions, and many more features if this is for you. This is really fleets for Azure, but glad to see it come to Azure as well.
It's definitely a welcome addition, being able to have that flexibility and configure ephemeral workloads. It's good.
Yeah. I hate all the naming of this, though.
Still. A lot of names.
Scale sets, scale in, scale out. Just ugh.
Needed to have a decoder ring as I read the press release just to figure out what this was because didn't get it from the summary.
I'd say you got to be first to market to have the right names on things, but then AWS aren't really great at that either. So
I mean, Google's the one who's getting all the good names nowadays because they go with the most obvious thing.
Yeah,
Google proxy server, got it. I know exactly what that is. Google firewall, check, got it. I know what that is too.
So then you're not a big fan of SageMaker?
No.
I think SageMaker is a beautiful name. I'm hoping for the naming convention, like in the 90s and the early 2000s, that to come back in vogue, where we start naming everything after our favorite superheroes or Simpsons character, or because it's like fashion, it'll come around again.
Right? Yeah, right. It will.
Fair enough. You can start naming all your services after Simpsons characters again. All kinds of
Lord of the Rings. Sci-fi characters, Borg who comes to mind.
Yep, for sure.
Mine was always motorcycles because I'm kind of a one-trick pony there. But yeah,
I mean, how many brands of motorcycles? Oh, you did brand and model.
You can do all kinds of things. It's mostly just, and it has to be like theme adjacent at where. So.
I mean, naming of servers can become important again when IPv6 becomes popular because no one's going to remember the IPs anymore. All right. Well, that is it for new news this week. Let's go to the other new news, the lightning round, Peter.
Yes. AWS Systems Manager Change Calendar now supports third-party calendar imports, giving you a more holistic view of events.
I mean, what? No one wanted to use Workmail for this? Come on. What?
Oh, so I was hoping that I could use one of those managed calendars. So I will never schedule a change during one of the Sharks games.
Ooh, I like it.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
I imported the Mayan calendar and it told me that everything broke a few years ago.
Amazon Code Guru Reviewer adds new inconsistency detectors.
I need another reason not to run this on my code.
Well, Ryan, I'm happy to tell you that I now know that I'm inconsistently consistent.
I read it yesterday, but it gave me a different answer.
Ooh. Jonathan. Can I just
we should note this down. I think somehow I feel like this contest is over.
How about cross-account event discovery for Amazon Event Bridge schema registry? Anything?
I'm still trying to discover what Event Bridge schemas are, but it's all good. Take a cross account.
And once I discover them, I'll register. I've got nothing.
AWS Database Migration Service now supports migrating multiple databases in one task using MongoDB as a source.
I couldn't figure out why they needed this. Then I was like, oh yeah, MongoDB, you had to shard everything. So yeah, you're going to need this.
What could possibly go wrong doing it all at once?
I mean, it wasn't consistent before. It's really, really inconsistent now.
Amazon Monitron launches a new Ethernet gateway device.
I am from the planet Monitron. I need an Ethernet gateway.
It's pretty good too.
Did I miss the announcement of the Monotron service?
It's something so not in our wheelhouse. It's like Monotron is for monitoring industrial equipment. So you probably remembered it and it went out of your ear because you were like, I'll never use that.
Yeah. Speaking of first to market on names, I guess.
I thought it was the name of that robot from Lost in Space.
Danger, Will Robinson.
Oh, he's the best. Amazon CloudWatch application insights add support for Microsoft SQL Server FCI and FSX storage.
So you now figure out what to do with all that FSX storage on NetApp, apparently.
Yeah. I bet you could find a way to spend some extra money doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, AWS Firewall Manager now supports AWS WAF log filtering.
All right, which of you guys let your security person get to Amazon who said, well, we already filtered it with the WAF. We need to filter it with the firewall too.
No. So you've misunderstood this. This is so that I can finally let the security in. So I'm going to filter out all the attacks and the stuff that's being blocked away so they don't freak out and think that everything's on fire.
Okay. Oh.
So you're thinking WAF in front of the firewall. You give them access to the firewall. You blocked it at the WAF. I see. Okay.
Yeah, we don't log that.
Got
part,
it.
So
check.
Yeah, your botnet has no power here.
What are all these denied events? Well, they were denied. Who cares anymore?
I know.
Exactly.
Really. The best CISO I ever had was like, I don't care about deny logs. I want the allow logs because I want to know what's actually getting through.
Yeah.
I was like, that's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
That concludes our round. Jonathan is the winner.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, well earned.
Yep.
That was good.
All right, I marked it. He actually did his homework, so he's actually prepared for the jokes this week.
Yeah. It showed.
See, preparation works, Jonathan. That's all it takes.
I'd like to say I did preparation, but I was just slacking off earlier in the show, and then
I got bored when you were talking about FSX, so I just scrolled down to the lightning round and started reading.
Nice.
Yeah, NetApp, schmatap, whatever.
Yeah. He's saying why? Because I'm like, he's off on the lightning round. Got it. All right. Well, there are things coming up once again here in the cloud world. Azure Data Governance event, September 28th. Check that out. SNCC October 5th through 7th. We did interview Josh Stella earlier. He said SNCC. I don't know if you caught that, Jonathan. So the never-ending quest to figure out how to say snake properly is still going. So I'm hoping the conference will answer that question for us on October 5th through the 7th. KubeCon, October 11th through 15th, and Google Cloud Next, October 12th through the 14th, as well as the HashiConf, October 19th through the 22nd. And the Google Government and Education Summit, I believe is Google, right? Yes, Google, November 3rd through 4th. And AWS reInvent, November 29th through December 3rd, which did have an update today.
Yes.
They will require you to be vaccinated if you're going to the conference. Unvaccinated people will not be allowed to attend in person. So that's just one more step towards this thing's getting canceled, just to be honest. But if it does happen, I feel much, much better about it being vaccinated personally. I was sort of on the side of I'm not going to go if it happens, and now I'm back to 50-50.
I read that the other way, that was a commitment to doing it. It's like, this is, what do we do to make it safe? Mm-hmm. This is the biggest move that you can do, which is limit entry.
Yeah, well, but based on this, the Seattle Kraken, which is their NHL team, which I think Andy Jassy is a minority owner of it. They also announced that they were going to require only vaccinated people to go to Seattle Kraken games in person, which was one of the very first Seattle teams to make that declaration as well. So, I suspect that it's just maybe an overall Andy Jassy thing. Just like, no, vaccination required. It's pure speculation.
Could be.
Vaccinated and masked.
Correct. And masked as well, yes.
Yeah.
So required to wear a mask at all times and be vaccinated. So they are holding, again, I think you're right. I think it's how do we mitigate the risk if it does happen in person? But I also think it's, if there's a big fall spike, a fourth wave in the fall, I don't think it's happening. So we'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, if there's,
Well, if I go, I can tell you one thing.
Yeah. I'm
going to be watching the keynote from my hotel room.
Yeah, I'll be doing that either way. So
yeah.
I do that without COVID.
Done that for the last several years.
I do that without COVID, let alone with COVID. So,
yeah.
I don't want to wake up that early to get into the dumb room to sit there on really uncomfy seats.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
To wait in line.
That's interesting. I wonder if Werner's actually back in the country yet, or if he's still in the Netherlands.
I think he's still in the Netherlands. Last I heard, but his blog
Hmm.
post 2 weeks ago, we talked about he was still in the Netherlands, going to shows. So.
Interesting.
All right. All right. Well, there are things coming up once again here in the cloud world. Azure Data Governance event, September 28th. Check that out. SNCC October 5th through 7th. All right. Well, that's another fantastic week in the cloud. We got to let Peter get off to smoke his meat and let him get that going. So appreciate you guys here. See you next week in the cloud.
Have a good night.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
And that is the week in the cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Foghorn Consulting and JumpCloud. Check out our website, the home of the Cloud Pod, where you can join our newsletter, Slack team, and send feedback or ask questions at thecloudpod.net or tweet us with the hashtag #thecloudpod.